I'm going again this year, but I wasn't able to get a badge for the day that the Avatar panel is on. None of the voice actors are going this year, but Michael Dante DiMartino is going. He's one of the original creators of the original show, and he's also working on the upcoming live-action show. I will be sending a friend to record the panel for me, if they're allowed, and I will be uploading it here on this channel, so stay tuned and subscribe for more Avatar-related videos.
And I are doing a middle grade graphic novel series called Superman Smashes the Klan, about Superman smashing the Ku Klux Klan.
The original radio plays back from like
that's right.
Yeah,
that's exactly it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's just start it out and to the whole panelists, but to my in particular, what made you want to continue the Avatar story? Past the Korra show, past the Avatar The Last Airbender show, what made a comics an appealing format, and then a prose novel an appealing format, and just how did you know you had more to tell?
Honestly, it's when other people are like, hey, can you tell more stories? And we're like, all right, let's think about it. And then like, yeah, I guess there's some more stories to tell. You know, years ago when Gene got on board, like, it was Dark Horse coming to us and asking like, hey, would you and Brian be interested in doing graphic novels? Abrams came to us, like, would you be interested in doing YA novels? And we were. You know, it's cool to bring in other voices into this world and keep the stories alive, because I know you guys want some new content. We're not making an animated show anymore, so we got to keep it alive in these other formats.
So for all my other panelists, what has it been like jumping on board and continuing the stories in this universe? How has that been for the time you've been doing it, or if you're still doing it? What's it like going forward?
It's pretty intimidating once it's in your own head, but it becomes less so once you start talking to Mike and he starts giving guidance and advice on where to take these stories. So it's extremes on both ends.
It was absolutely terrifying for me at first. Avatar is my favorite animated show, and to be given the responsibility of writing these characters, writing new stories, canon stories in this world was very intimidating at first. Again, you know, like FC's experience, it's like once I dove into that world, once I started working with Mike and Brian, the world became more real to me, and I was able to hopefully interpret it better onto the page. But I don't know, I feel incredibly fortunate and incredibly like astonished that I've been chosen for this job, and yeah, just super, super lucky.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like nuts, right? Yeah, I mean, so here's how my life went during those few years. Like, I was watching the last season of Avatar: Last Airbender on DVD. I watched the finale with my wife, and at the very end, we screamed, "What happened to Zuko's mom?" and like 3 years later, I'm like working with Mike DiMartino on the comic book that answers that question. It was nuts. It was nuts. It was shocking.
So Mike and FC, obviously you're writing a novel about Avatar Kyoshi, who's one of the previous avatars before Roku and before Korra. What about Kyoshi was attractive to you as a writer, and also what about her makes her an interesting subject matter for the novel and an interesting story to tell?
Yeah, when the idea came to like do a novel, I don't exactly remember all the details, but you know, when Brian and I were talking about it, we're like, we already have these characters that people are familiar with, they love, they dress up like Avatar Kyoshi. We don't know a lot about her. You know, like she was one of the avatars that people seem to gravitate toward quite a bit. So it just seemed like, especially for a YA novel, it just seemed like the best place to tell her story. And then, you know, I think you had some thoughts on her as well. So.
Yeah, the sort of pitch came from a publisher out of the blue, but the things prior to that, you know, I loved Avatar Kyoshi and how kind of an effective a character she was in just a short amount of screen time, and what an effective foil she was to Aang. And I would think that, oh, you know, if there's anyone I really want to learn more about, it would be her. And then and anyone who you have that has that kind of like I guess intensity and interesting nature to it makes for great additional material.
Absolutely. So while we have this beautiful piece of art up on the screen, Mike, why bring Kuvira back?
Because she's great. Yeah, she was one of my favorite characters that we wrote into season 4 of Korra, and we left her in this place of like, yeah, she was defeated, and she kind of had a moment of like, feeling remorseful for what she did, but we didn't have a chance to like really dig into it, so it just seemed like really right story material to like focus on her and her relationship with the Bayfong family and her, being the adopted daughter there, and like, just going from like a character that when we first met her, like she was technically on the good guy's side. She was working with Sue and she helped Korra save her dad. She saved Korra's dad's life, and then she became the villain of the story. And then like how do you mend those relationships once they've been like kind of ripped apart by war and strife and everything.
Awesome. So something I think that speaks to all of us about Avatar is how it balances really heavy subject material, but also not shying away from being like, no, life is actually pretty awesome and there are things to celebrate. And looking at Korra and Aang, there's both an anger to them and a curiosity to them, but also like a joyousness to them. And going into Kyoshi, I assume that's kind of the same. That passes on throughout everybody, but writing these characters for Jean, FC, and Faith, how has it been like to balance kind of the comedy of those characters?
I think one of the things I really appreciate about the Avatarverse is just how well fleshed out it is. In a lot of ways, all of the groundwork has been laid out for all these characters. And I think that's why there's a demand for further stories. Is because you can feel that you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, whether it's the show or any of the ancillary stuff. It's the tip of the iceberg because the world itself is so well designed. I do think that, I also do comics where I just come up with stories myself. And one of the big differences between doing that and doing the Avatar comics is that when I'm doing the Avatar comics, I am trying to write in the voice of the world as opposed to my own voice. And as you pointed out, the voice of Avatar is like this blend of hope and realism. Like there's this, it's very real about the dark sides of life, but ultimately it's hopeful. And I think that's why so many people, it means so much to so many people, right? Like whenever we face darkness in our lives, we can kind of remember that there's hope underneath.
And just for me, it's like I've always really enjoyed Avatar's balance between the darker sides of the stories that it tells, and also like this really fun, rich, character-based comedy. Like it's just such a funny show at times, and I feel like that comedy always comes from a very genuine place in the characters. Like watching it, it's like Toph and Sokka were my favorite characters, and Sokka in particular. I just thought I called him my TV boyfriend. And when I started writing the comics, it was like, oh, I want to make sure that Sokka has a lot to do in this story, because he's my favorite, and I love him a lot. But it's like he's still a character that is rich and that is three-dimensional, and I love that about him. He's not comic relief. He's a three-dimensional, fully realized character who just happens to be like really cute and really funny. And that's something that naturally appeals to me as a human woman.
Yeah, there's just room for everything in the universe, and I think that's part of what makes it so appealing. Just like life, like you said, there's joy, there's tragedy, but it's universal in the sense that all facets of life can be human.
Absolutely. So, I'll give you guys an easy question after that really kind of deep one. What's been your favorite moment to write in the Avatar universe?
That's not an easy question.
I've answered this once smaller than you. It's not a big, terrible spoiler, but in the book, Kyoshi juggernauts through an entire village. He just runs through it. through all the ones.
Come back to me. I gotta think about this for a minute.
I know, I'm trying to figure. I loved writing the first episode Toph ever appeared in. That was like my homage to the WWE style. Toph, so that's good.
I don't know if I can come up with one moment, but when I was watching the show, my favorite character was definitely Zuko. I feel like it had the most complex arc, you know, and you know, we all struggle with good and evil, and he struggled with it so bad it like affected his face, like his face was. That's really intense. But then I have to say that when I started writing the comics, my favorite became Toph. Because she's so easy to write. Like, we can all write her. We can all write her. Just close your eyes. And imagine her yelling at you. Write down what you hear.
Everything you want to say to someone, and just like, there's no filter.
Yeah, I guess I would say the same. I love writing Toph. I remember once, again, she's one of my favorite characters, and I remember once I had this, in the first script for Imbalance, I had this little scene where it's like, she very easily takes down a bad guy. And I remember Brian giving me a note and being like, Faith, you know, I know Toph is like your favorite character, but, you know, it doesn't have to be so easy for her, you know, and I was just like, I will fight you, Brian.
I also like writing old Toph, because that's even more. I put her in the Ruins of the Empire much, because she had to come back.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask, what's it like writing young Toph versus old Toph? To me, they seem very similar. Obviously, old Toph's more mature, but maybe at the same time also a little bit less mature.
They're not the same. That's what I find funny about old Toph, is just like she kind of talks exactly the same as she was 12. With maybe a little more, you know, she's seen to the world and she's a little more bitter about things than she was when she was 12. So. Now she lives in a cave in the swamp, so.
She made the right choices. So something else I wanted to ask you guys about was the world moving forward, how we seem to see different time periods and how the world is advancing. And I found that really interesting just as a reader and a watcher of the shows, that you don't see many, you know, fantasy things move past a certain period of time. And obviously, After Universe hasn't shied away from moving forward in technology in the years. So what was the decision there, Mike, to kind of move that forward, and how has everybody else played with that?
Like from
and
Korra and stuff?
On your end, just kind of going back in time a little bit.
You mean for Korra, like jumping ahead?
Yeah.
I mean, we just wanted to do, when that series came about, it was just like wanting to do something that felt like Avatar, but also felt totally new and kind of different. And Brian and I love that era, you know, 20s, 30s era, and it just seemed like with the technology stuff we had kind of introduced in Avatar, it was a way to kind of update it a little bit. And then, but then going back to like Yoshi's time and seeing the origins of things back then, it's fun to just jump around in time and have that flexibility with different characters and their worlds.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody else, how has it been writing in different time periods? I mean, and the one we're looking at right now, Imbalance, they're leaning on the steel beam, it looks like, so.
Yeah, Imbalance was actually very much inspired by Korra. I was really fascinated with the idea of, like, you know, showing this sort of awkward middle period between, you know, the technological advancements of Korra and the very limited technology that was available during Aang's time. But also I wanted to focus on conflicts between benders and non-benders, and in Korra we see the Equalists are the enemies, and they have harnessed technology in order to fight back and make things more equal between them and benders. And I wanted to show also potentially the benefits of machines and the rise of technology in Imbalance, because in Imbalance we have plot lines where non-benders are rising in society because technology has given them the means to advance their businesses, and, you know, just to enrich their lives in a way that was perhaps only available to vendors previously. So that was something that was really interesting to me, to show kind of the flip side of how technology was viewed in Korra by vendors. And Sokka in particular has the opinion that, you know, this technology can be really beneficial. It can raise the status of non-vendors in society that may potentially be dominated by vendors.
I feel like I may have had an easier time with it because I figured progress would be your the real world where things are mostly the same, you know, some mistakes into, you know, a lot of advancement. So I tried to keep that vein where there's a lot of elements of familiarity with the original show, except things like it takes longer for people to get from one place to another. People die of disease a lot more frequently. There's a lot more poverty as well. Because if you look at track real history, that's the majority of human history. Advancement starts
Awesome. So, okay. When writing Avatar, or just in the world of Avatar, what kind of things do you each look back on to kind of inform where the story's going? It's something that really interests me about the world is that there seems to be a cyclical kind of nature to a lot of things that happen, and a lot of mirroring of real world, problems happening today. So how much do you pull from, the established past, thematic past, and the real world, and how do you blend that all together?
Maybe you do a lot of research, don't you?
I was just following from you can tell that the original show just had a lot of homework behind it.
But I like when Gene came out, he's like, oh yeah, well we could reference this like thing in China, for this era, and man, that's awesome.
That's because
we love drawing on real stuff.
Yeah. I think like when I first signed on Avatar, you guys sent me like all these crazy documents where you did talk about the real world cultures and influence each of the different nations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes I think you too. So like when you would often reference like, oh, there was this actual conflict or war or event that like informed some of what you were doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think even though that's referenced in very specific stacks points in history and whatnot, what made it easy to, or what helped to draw on is just the fact that the world is such a living, breathing organism. So if something happens and it went, to the right hand, the left hand is going to feel it, and things will shift around, and that kind of almost cyclical pattern you're talking about, because that's what happens to, kind of like a living world or a living economy or a living organism where it adapts and changes over time in response to various stimulus, and because the world is so fleshed out, it's almost, it helps build that, lay a foundation for that world building. What happens here will end up feeding into the next, which will end up feeding into the next, over and over again.
Yeah, that's what kind of interests me, like something with Imbalance or something, how like the seeds of the stuff that was going on in this story, like later feed into what happened in Korra, and like because we're kind of jumping between time periods and these different mediums, like we're like going back and seeding things that actually did have an effect later on, and even as the Avatar, like each Avatar is kind of having to deal with the stuff that past Avatar either did well or didn't do well, or they're always, it's this thing of like that history isn't just this like, it's like a thing happened and then it was done. It was like there was repercussions that like keep passing on through the ages and through these different incarnations of the Avatar.
One thing I really appreciate about Avatar history is if you look at the world in the original series and then you compare it to the world in Korra, it really is a story about a world becoming multicultural. Like these nations that were once relatively separate are really coming together in a big way, where you have people living next to people who aren't necessarily of their home culture. And what does it mean to do that? And if you look at like the world today, this is like something we're trying to figure out like right now. So I think that's why, even if we're not conscious of it, the history of the world in Avatar is actually trying to like teach us something about how we're actually supposed to live. Another reason I think why the show went off the air like over a decade ago and people were still cosplay it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like one, for the Ruins of the Empire, like one of the things that was at the end of season 4 of Korra was this idea that Luke was like, idealistically, King Wu was going to be like, oh, we're going to turn the Earth Kingdom democratic, isn't that really great? And it's like, well, what's the reality of like how do you actually do that? And I was actually drawing on, I had visited Bhutan years and years ago, and around that time there was a monarchy there and there was a king, it's this small Buddhist country, and he decided to just turn the country democratic, and he's like, there would still be a king, but he's like, I shouldn't be the guy who's like deciding everything for everyone. It was actually quite a selfless thing to do. But surprisingly, there was like a lot of people in the country who were like, no, but we like how things are. What is this democracy thing? Like, you just think like, we live in democracy, so you think like, oh, of course, that's the best choice. Like, but there are places where like, going into that system, like it causes some conflict before you can get to a place where it's working for everyone. So I found that pretty interesting. So that was kind of an inspiration for that storyline in the Empire.
Absolutely. It seems like there's a lot more scenes where people are just talking to each other instead of, what the show was, which was more action-based. Just animation versus static image, but it also seems to mirror kind of the characters growing up, where they're realizing that, punching people isn't always going to be the way to win. And was that a conscious choice moving forward in the timeline, writing these characters as they come together?
They still punch people though.
Yeah,
they absolutely still do.
It might just be, and I have a better answer, Gene, but like just a result of the format you're working in, because it's like, yeah, you want to have some cool action moments and dynamic panels and stuff, but like, it isn't, people aren't moving, you don't have the sound effects, not the music. And also you can imply a bigger action scene with fewer problems, or you might be able to spell out everything. So,
well, I'd just like to say there's a huge action scene at the end of The Balance of 3, and my collaborator, Peter Wortman, who did the art, he was incredible and rose to the challenge, and I remember saying to him, like at the beginning of working on that book, I was like, just so you know, Peter, this is what I'm going to do to you. And he was like, all right, bring it on.
Peter is fantastic.
Yes, Peter is amazing.
Yes, Peter's amazing. I don't know, that was just something I know.
No, I think that's true. I think definitely some of it comes from the difference between animation and comics. I do also think that some of it is because of the time period that the comics are set in, right? The comics are actually set in this post-war period, and in the the establishing documents that we got from Mike and Brian, it did talk about how the Fire Nation was kind of modeled after like Meiji Restoration Japan, like pre-World War II Japan. So we looked at what happened to Japan after the end of World War II. And there was a lot of talking, there was a lot of negotiation, there was a lot of trying to figure out, so who are we now, who is the world now? And a lot of that stuff just happens through words.
And then I know certainly, like looking at where the kids are in their lives now, it's like all of a sudden Aang is this negotiator and Sokka is a negotiator, and I definitely feel like their roles in the world have shifted, whereas, throughout the course of the show, they were fugitives. They were constantly on the run from the authorities, and now they're in positions, if not authority, they're in positions of respect, at least. So people look to them for possible leadership and guidance, and that's a huge shift from their roles in the show.
Absolutely. So I want to ask Mike and Gene, forklift. What about the forklifts made you want to include it in that?
It was like, just say the word forklift really loud. It's funny. No, it was also a way of showing that technology was progressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also a forklift is a fun word.
When I first read through this, a while ago, and I saw this picture, just like, I love forklifts. They're so good. So something else that the show, especially Korra, has touched on is kind of this push against, not necessarily against vendors, but people, non-vendors, also being like, hey, we're important to, we have agency in this world as well. And moving forward in the Korra comics, that still seems like that's a thing that's being dealt with. through Kavira, through the Earth Empire, and through everything else in the world. So I guess my question is, what is your answer to vendors versus non-vendors? Like how do you as people kind of marry those two things, and in the world, how do you plan on like fully answering the question?
I mean, I don't know that there's like a definitive answer. It's
Right.
more, it's like with all the like the four nations or whatever, it's not about one is the right way, one's wrong, or it's like just how do you negotiate this balance of things. And I think that's why this series can like live on in other stories or whatever. It's like thematically, it's a never-ending question. Like there's no answer.
Right.
And it's just like different approaches to finding that balance. And when things go out of whack, how do you bring them back? And how do you negotiate kind of chaos in balance?
Well, so yeah, with the exception of the Fire Nation's takeover in the original series and season 2 of Korra, the villains of the show of Korra in particular, they're not necessarily wrong. The methodology is wrong, but what their ideas aren't necessarily. It definitely feels like the characters, whether initially or not, kind of come to embrace the ideologies as well in the progressive series. So I guess just why?
I mean, that was our goal with, especially starting when Korra. It was just like these more nuanced villains or antagonists, people who did have a really solid philosophy behind what they were doing, and like you said, they're totally out of balance and they're totally out of whack, and they're doing it not in a healthy way, I guess.
I think I'm just gonna talk as a fan. The episode Beach, like the beach. I think that particular episode really embodies everything that's awesome about Avatar: Last Airbender. Because before that, like Azula was just a straight up evil character, and I think in a less sophisticated show, she would just sort of stay like that. Yeah. And at the end of the beach, you're like, I don't know, I think I might be on her side. It makes you like examine yourself and your own history and your relationship to this animated character. Like that was the brilliance of it, and I think that's why like people gravitate towards it, right? It really it's a better mirror of what our world actually is, as opposed to having these one-dimensional villains.
Yes.
I also feel like there's like a kind of like I'm not sure if it's a sliding scale or a graph between like nuance and level of villainy, where you have, if somebody is their villainous acts are still not too bad, then I'm sure it's understandable on some level of nuance. When you start talking about genocide and 100-year wars, it can be nuanced, but I don't really care anymore. We have to put it down. So.
Absolutely. Well, we have about 20 minutes left, and we have some books here to give away for people. To be clear, this is a trivia game. This is the Q&A. Yeah, you run out of phones before the time's up. The Q&A. But
I feel like we need to reward them.
all right, here's what I'll do. Mike will be the. Mike as the creator of the show will be the end-all be-all. I took it off of me and I put it on for you. Moderator. All right, so.
Hi. So first, thank you all for putting such positivity out in the world. It means a lot, and I'm sure every one of us here have been touched. So my question is, I'm sure every one of us here, there's a specific character through the entire Avatar universe that has impacted us and had some sort of positive impact on our own mental wellness. So I was wondering for you if there was any character specific in the Avatar universe that kind of had a positive impact on you, whether it was their art or just their identity in general.
Specific characters from the Avatar universe who've had an impact on us?
Yeah. Okay.
I would say for me it was Zuko. It was Zuko.
Yes.
For me, it was, I'd say say Aang, but actually kind of Korra, because Korra's more different than I am, so I feel like writing her and following her journey helped me grow a lot.
For me, it was 100% Toph. I was this huge, like, tomboy when I was a kid, and, you know, like, I was always climbing trees and getting dirty, and, like, especially growing up as, like, a kid in the, you know, 80s and 90s, it's like, you didn't really see female characters like that in visual fiction. Like, sure, there were stories in books, but I never really saw a character like me represented in media, visual media. So, like, I found Avatar when I was, you know, when I was in my early 20s, and it was so exciting to find this character that resonated with me, that I saw myself in a way that I hadn't before. I really wish I'd seen the show when I was 10. Like, I feel like it would have been, I would have been dressing up as her for Halloween, like, every year, you know? Like, I would have been that person. And, you know, I still feel like she's kind of rare, and it's like we definitely need more diversity of characters, especially in the portrayal of women, you know, in girls and women in visual media. So yeah, Toph has my heart.
So, while my favorite character is Toph, in terms of influence, I would say more so Sokka, because Sokka's an example of how, you know, no matter how tough times get or what the challenges, we're all still obligated to put effort and brain power into trying to move the world better.
Give this one maybe a book. Come on up. Pick your book.
KJ, my little mini. Yay.
Brand new.
Hi guys. First I want to say thank you for coming.
Can you lift them up?
Can you hear me? I just want to say thank you for coming. I'm enjoying a lot that you guys implemented through the years. Like I think we fans, we all appreciate the fact that every single year you guys coming one way or the other. And my question comes with the storyline of Iroh. I was wondering if you ever thought of the possibility of going into the story of his travels to the spirit world, because it's one of the lines that I think many of us fans want to get in the world. So will you be interested on maybe following that?
Yeah, that's definitely one area that would be good for exploring economics, babe. Yeah, Iroh is one of my favorites for sure. I would like to see that too.
Hey, get on it, Mike. Make that happen.
We'll put that in the idea box.
You're the gatekeeper and all this, Mike. You make it happen.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for coming out. So come get a book.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm a big fan of all the creature creations you guys made. Besides Naga, what's your favorite creature that was in both of those series?
One of my favorites actually is the Shirshin, because it's like the one like super horror creature we did. And then also the Eelhound, which I think we put in, right?
Yeah, it's in balance.
Like it was this idea we had at the end of Avatar, but it was like one of the coolest creatures, and can't made it come back.
I think I like the lizards that Kylie, Zula, and they ride where they're running, and then they get to the river and they just start running on the water. That's the best method. It's like, oh, come on! This creature is clearly overpowered.
They need a nerf it.
I think the bear. Just the
I mean, I was just gonna say I like the Persian cat. like I love cats. And,
Yeah.
I don't know, and like for Imbalance, I asked you and Brian, and I was like, well, this character, she's like super rich, so she needs like a super fancy pet. And do you have anything in Avatar that's like super fancy? And you're like, well, there's a Persian cat. And I was like, perfect.
I like turtle ducks.
Yeah.
In part because I wonder what they taste like.
Oh, I have a turtle duck story.
Like Peking turtle duck. That's what Come on.
I have a silly little turtle balance, there was this one little comment that Sokka made about he was really excited to like sleep in this luxurious apartment, and there were like turtle duck stuffed pillows, like, you know, super luxurious, and Brian was like, oh, please save the turtle ducks. And so I just changed the line to like unnecessarily
I guess I'll never change that.
Yeah, so I was, it's like, you want to eat them, I just want to pluck them.
Give this man a thank you.
If Aang had lost the final battle, and I know the years don't match up here, and Korra had been born into a world ravaged by the comet-powered Fire Nation army, do you think she could have brought balance back? Do you think she could have beaten the Fire Lord?
Interesting fan fiction you're working on. I don't know, would it have been Korra? It might have been a different Avatar, because it's all about the timing. Planets were aligned differently. There's a comet in the sky. I don't know.
Actually, I think that brings up a great, like, that's a great story idea. Like, you know how like DC Universe has multiple timelines?
Well, in like 20 years after we burn up all this other material, we'll get to the alternate timeline. Avatar story. Yeah. Well, you get for original, you come get a book.
Hey, I have a question about The Rise of Kyoshi. Did anything in it turn out differently than you might have expected when you started writing it? And then for Mike, what changed or became different about Kyoshi compared to how she was envisioned years ago when you were writing the show?
I mean, I'll answer the second part first. I mean, the cool thing about doing this is that it wasn't like Brian and I had worked out a whole backstory of like Kyoshi when she was younger. Like we had an idea of who she was when she was the Avatar and some ideas there. So it was more, the challenge was more like taking what we know about how she became that way, like what things in her past, and when she became the Avatar and found out she was the Avatar, like how did those events influence the type of Avatar she became? And then you just took that and ran with it, basically.
I guess the question was, did anything change while writing it from...
Or did anything change about the way you had a concept of the character to start with? And how did that change as you fleshed her out further?
I don't think anything changed in terms of the most general parts of the concept, because the thing is, I'm pretty sure that given what we know of Kyoshi in the series, that's kind of where she ends up. That can't be changed. That's fact. I didn't know I wanted to make her start out as a very different person to properly capture the narrative arc towards how she gets there. In terms of did anything actually change from like the original way I was thinking? I do remember submitting some outlines where they were very much about her status as the Avatar and trying to find out more information about it. But then I realized, oh no, we can just kind of like do away with that and make everything go much, much worse than that. So, yeah.
Good book.
Hi guys. Hi. So I've had this has kind of been a question I've been wanting to ask for a very long time, but will there ever be a Korra story where she reconnects with her past lives again? Or do you think you have the right preference?
I don't know, man. I mean, right now there's nothing in the works. I know
hypothetically, like future avatars will probably want to know more than just Korra. They want to learn more than just Korra.
Yes, the knowledge she has now, she was going to have to pass on.
Yeah.
Whether or not she can actually connect with her past lives again or not, I'm not sure.
Maybe you can come get a book. Hello.
Hello, my question is for Mike. I'm currently a RISD student, really hoping to work in animation. And when Avatar first aired, when I was in second grade, it made me realize my dream and the kind of stories that I really want to devote my life to someday creating more than anything, I truly hope that I can make something that inspires someone just like Fraction as much as Avatar has inspired so many people. I was wondering if you had any advice for aspiring creators hoping to do something truthful and new that might not be within like the current industry standard for animation, since I know that Avatar in its time was such a trailblazing show.
Yeah, we were. That's awesome. I mean, the good thing is, I feel like the good news is, and the positive thing is, like, way more diversity of stories are out there now. You know, especially, you know, it's definitely changing in TV and film. I feel like the experience I've had in publishing and comics, like, I feel like even more so, there's more, you know, willingness, even, especially in, like, even middle grade, which I wrote in a little bit, and young adult, like, to explore stories that aren't, you know, in the typical realm, I guess, and exploring different cultures or experiences. So, you know, but as far as, like, creating your own stuff, like, there's just, I mean, everyone, I'm sure, will have a similar thing where it's like, there's just no substitute. You just gotta keep going. Like, even when it sucks, and you're like, why am I doing this? No one wants to read this. No one wants to watch this. Like, you have to kind of just keep going and learning as much as you can along the way. Like, and sometimes that might, you know, something might not be working because you just, you know, you still have to work at your craft or learn more about writing or whatever, you know. And I'm still learning more about writing and how to tell effective stories every day. So, and learning from people I work with. So, it's like, it is like, I think people have maybe a misconception that you get this one amazing idea and then it becomes this thing, and it's like, you might get the idea, but if you don't have like the tools to actually make that into something, like, it's just gonna fizzle out and you don't know what to do with it. So it's really just like the working on it. But cool, I'm glad you're at this. Come get a book.
Hello. So I have a question about I know you guys are working with Netflix about but I was wondering, can we anticipate the possibility of original voice actors from the cast be playing a role at all?
I literally cannot say anything about that. All I can say is like, we're working on it. You have to be patient. It's gonna take a while. So yeah, we're so far away from casting and all that stuff so far. But I know everyone's interested, but yeah, you're just gonna have to be patient. But you need to come get a book anyway.
Something I've been interested in for a while is, how did Amon stop the bending? What did he actually do that was different from what Aang did, what Aang or Korra did?
Take me back. He was like bending the energy within people, as I recall. You guys probably know this better than I do. He was blood bending, but he was like, yeah, he was tapping into they're like, you know, the chakra energy, or, you know, like the chi, all that stuff like that. It was kind of like what chi blockers do, like it was like messing up their energy pathways, so like, it didn't bend anymore. Does that answer your question?
What did Aang do with it, and how did Aang formally take it away, and how could Amon just like temporarily stop it, or formally take it away?
I missed that question. You guys hear that?
How could Aang like formally take it away, but Amon just
how could he
stop it?
Because he's the Avatar, man.
Yeah, we have time for more questions. That was just the last book.
Sorry.
It's okay. This is enough of a privilege. My name's Simon. I was watching Avatar since I was 7, and I find it so crazy because now I'm 21. When I was 7, it was just this cool show about like people moving around water and earth and having these cool powers. But now that I watch it, there's so many like spiritual themes and different motives, and it's a lot deeper than I thought it was growing up. And I just wanted to know how many like Eastern philosophies and spirituality, like where did you guys pull that from? I know there was Buddhism with the chakras and reincarnation, but were there any other inspirations for that?
No, those are definitely part of it. I mean, Taoism was definitely inspiration for the Airbenders. And, you know, I think we try not to say, like, it's drawn from just one religion or philosophy or anything. You know, we definitely draw from a bunch of different types of cultures and ways of thinking. But you find in all these different cultures there's a lot of overlap. A lot, you know, about just being in balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Hi. So the comics have been able to shine a light on a lot of characters who had a lot more of their story to be told after the finale. I was wondering if we might be able to, if you have any plans to expand on a character you mentioned before, Azula.
I have to say my experience with Azula fans is like, oh, it's kind of like a cult. Not saying you are.
Yeah, like, for the most part, Avatar fans have been just absolutely lovely to me, but I got kind of a scary email from someone who was an Azula fan and was, you know, very aggressively demanding that I write her in a certain way, and I actually, like, shut down my email on my website because of it, because it unnerved me so much. And, like, it was a little weird because, like, Azula is one of my favorite characters as well, but it made me, like, scared me off, perhaps, writing her in the future. So yeah, please be kind to creators. We're working very hard on licensed properties. I'm sure none of you guys would do this. I love Azula. I think she's great. I would like to write her. I would like to write more stories. Jean left her place in the world very open-ended. I actually love the way Jean wrote her. Like, I like Smoke and Shadow a lot. I think that story and where Azula's journey went was really fascinating to me. So yeah, I would like to write some Azula stories. As of right now, I'm working on new Avatar stories. Not necessarily working on a story with her, but maybe someday in the future. But yes, Azula fans, please be nice to me. I'm trying my best.
I think this is the last question, if I'm not mistaken.
Are you Noor Spider-Man?
Yes.
Excellent.
And then I know you, Gene, you mainly, sorry, the creator. You also work on the Dragon Prince on Netflix.
No, I do not.
Oh, anyways, then. Did you ever plan to continue the story after Korra with an earthbending avatar?
We have no plans to do any more animated series. But you know, it's Avatar, so there theoretically in the future could be other stories about other avatars, for sure. But that's why we did Kyoshi, because she's in her film.
Thank you.
We have time for one more. Okay, yeah.
Hi. I just had a question about, me and my friend were discussing once, about Avatar's rebirth. Once an Avatar dies, immediately does one become born? Or is there like some time, a couple years before the world realizes it needs a new Avatar and then it's reborn?
I think it's somewhat close. I don't know if it's immediate, but I feel like 2 years is probably a little long. But
So it's not like Avatar takes his last breath and then the baby takes his first. Is it like a couple?
no, I think it's good. I think the timeline's a lot closer.
I think there's official source material that says it happens in the next season corresponding with the element that comes up.
Yeah.